Hi, and welcome to today's Daily Chronicle. Today is September 20th, 2024. 5 smart habits to keep you out of credit card debt. Even if you use a credit card all the time, it can be difficult to understand the ins and outs of how they work. More Americans are falling behind on their credit card bills. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, people under 30, as well as lower income families, are the most likely to be maxed out. And that means they're at greater risk of missing a payment, reports NPR's Scott Horsley. But there are ways to keep your credit card bills under control, says John Kiernan, managing editor at the personal finance website Wallet Hub. He shares 5 tips on how to stay out of debt, including what to do if you miss a payment or are stuck paying interest and late fees. Make sure you understand how interest works. Interest compounds fast, and how it's calculated is often misunderstood. Let's say you open a credit card with a 27% APR, or annual percentage rate. That's how much you'll pay in interest on purchases, if you end up having to pay interest. You'll buy something on January 1st for $100. Then you don't make any payments on it for a year. You might think that on December 31st, you'll owe $127. But that's not the case. Interest and late fees start adding to your credit card balance the day you miss a payment, and you'll have to pay interest on interest and fees. Assuming $30 in late fees a month, plus interest and compound interest, your bill would almost double by the end of April. To avoid costly interest charges, pay your full statement balance every month at the due date, says Kiernan, otherwise they can get very, very expensive. Don't lose your grace period. If you do, try to get it back. There's another reason to pay your monthly statement balance in full, says Kiernan. You don't want to lose your grace period. It's an interest-free period that many credit card companies offer between the time you make a purchase and your payment is due. If you don't pay the full statement balance on time, the grace period goes away, and you'll start accruing interest every day, not just on that purchase, but on everything else you buy going forward. The good news is you can regain the grace period again. So if you lose it, call the customer service number on the back of your card, talk to a representative, and ask what you can do. They might say you need to settle up in full or pay 2 consecutive statement balances. If you can't pay the full balance, make the minimum payment. The minimum payment is the smallest amount you're required to pay each month to keep your account in good standing, says Kiernan. That can be a fixed dollar amount, maybe $25, or a small percentage, say 2% of the total you owe. If you don't make your monthly minimum payment, that will hurt your credit score, he warns. You will also be charged interest and probably late fees as well. If you miss a minimum payment, call your credit card company. They will often waive fees and interest if it's your first time. They're not going to do it every month, but if you've been a good customer, they may cut you a break, says Kiernan. You can also set up automatic payments so you won't miss a payment by mistake. If you're in credit card debt, consider a balance transfer. To avoid paying the additional interest on your credit card debt, try a maneuver called a balance transfer. That's when you roll over your debt to another credit card with a 0% interest rate for some period of time. It could be a year and a half, so that you're just paying the amount you already owe. If you do it right, you can take the current balance you can't pay and reduce the interest rate to 0, so you're only paying the principal. And you can pay that off much quicker at much less of an expense, says Kiernan. These cards will usually charge a one-time balance transfer fee of 3 to 5% of your total balance, but this is still a good deal if you pay off the debt within a 0% interest period. One thing to know about these cards, says Kiernan, a lot of people think that once you get a 0% card, you don't have to make any payments on it for the whole 0% period, but you still have to pay at least the minimum amount due on that. Create a strategy to pay off your credit card debt. If you find yourself routinely missing credit card payments, come up with a plan to pay your own debt, says financial coach Gainley Espinal, host of the Marketplace podcast, Financially Inclined. There are free online calculators that can help you do that. Let's say you have $500 balance on a 0% card. If you make monthly payments of $50, it will take you 10 months to pay off your debt. Make sure you factor those payments into your monthly budget. Take a look at your savings, assets, and income, as well as your debt. Fixed expenses like rent and other fluctuating monthly expenses, and figure out how and when you can pay that credit card bill off. Espinal says she was struggling with credit card debt in 2014, and having a plan to pay it off gave her a way forward. I knew that by October 2015, I was going to make my last payment. I was going to be debt-free. Uncommitted. Movement doesn't endorse Harris, but asks supporters to vote against Trump. Uncommitted delegates hold a press conference outside the United Center Forum before the Democratic National Convention on August 22nd in Chicago. The leaders of the uncommitted movement, which grew out of Democratic opposition to President Biden's policy towards Israel and Gaza, will not endorse Vice President Harris for president, but urge supporters to vote against former President Donald Trump and avoid third-party candidates. Harris's unwillingness to shift on unconditional weapons policy or to even make a clear campaign statement in support of upholding existing U.S. and international human rights law has made it impossible for us to endorse her. Organizers of the Uncommitted National Movement said in a statement, "At this time, our movement, 1, cannot endorse Vice President Harris. 2, oppose a Donald Trump presidency whose agenda includes plans to accelerate the killing in Gaza while intensifying the suppression of anti-war organizing. And 3, is not recommending a third-party vote in the presidential election, especially as third-party votes in key swing states could help inadvertently deliver a Trump presidency given our country's broken electoral college system," the statement continued. The uncommitted movement grew out of the Listen to Michigan campaign, ahead of the state's February presidential primary. Its goal was to send a message to Biden that he needed to do more to prevent civilian deaths in Gaza. Hundreds of thousands of voters eventually cast uncommitted ballots throughout the Democratic primary in several states. Organizers' key demands are for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and an end to U.S. weapons transfers to Israel. When Harris replaced Biden at the top of the ticket, they initially expressed optimism that Harris would be more open to their demands, providing a window of opportunity. But the group was angered when its request to have Palestinian Americans speak at the Democratic National Convention was denied. Organizers had also given the Harris campaign on September 15 deadline to respond to requests to meet with Palestinian American families in Michigan who had lost loved ones in Gaza. Abbas Alaway, a co-founder of the movement, said the campaign's response was not satisfactory. In a press conference after the announcement, leaders stressed that they are urging voters to block a second Trump term, but telling voters who have lost loved ones in Gaza to support Harris, Alaway said, would be inappropriate. Alaway called the non-endorsement something we have to do. "We know how dangerous Donald Trump is," he said. "There was no way ever that our movement would recommend a vote that would specifically help Donald Trump. We said to disenchanted voters that the way that we would endorse Vice President Harris is if she moved her policy, and if she turned the page to a new approach, and she just hadn't done that yet," Alaway said. A Harris campaign spokesperson said in a statement, "The Vice President is committed to work to earn every vote, unite our country, and to be a president for all Americans. She will continue working to bring the war in Gaza to an end in a way where Israel is secure. The hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination." Stuck in a rut? How to appreciate your life again, according to science. A new job, apartment, or relationship can all come with a sheen of excitement, but after that, luster fades after a while, and everything seems a bit duller. There's a term for that phenomenon, says Tali Sherritt, a cognitive neuroscientist at University College London and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in habituation. It's our tendency to respond less and less to things that are repeated or constant. Its evolutionary purpose is to help us adapt to our surroundings so we can be on high alert for new threats, but it can also impair our creativity and affect our levels of stress and happiness. So how do we add that sparkle back into our lives? In a new book, Look Again, The Power of Noticing What Was Always There, Sherritt and her colleague Cass R. Sustein, a professor at Harvard Law School and an expert on behavioral economics, discuss how to dishabituate. That means making changes that will allow us to feel joy again, from the same things that are around us, says Share It. Share It talked to Life Kit about how to disrupt your routine, get out of your rut, and revitalize your life. This conversation has been edited for length and clarity. In your book, you will reference an episode of The Twilight Zone. In it, a crook is killed during a robbery. In the afterlife, he is given an infinite access to money, cars, and women. It's great at first, but eventually, he isn't happy, and surprise, you find out he's in hell. What lesson can you glean from this? The major takeaway here is that even great things in your life, if they're always there, don't excite you as much. They don't bring you as much joy. I worked with a tourism company that wanted to know when are people happiest on vacation. We went to different resorts and surveyed people. We found the happiest day of vacation was at 43 hours. After that, happiness started to go down slowly. People are still happy on days 5, 6, 7, 8, but not as happy as they were on day 2. This habituation kicking in. They were getting used to the great things around them. And that's what's happened in the episode of The Twilight Zone. The crook has everything he thought he would want, but it wasn't as good as on day 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 as it was on day 1. Usually, by that point, you're looking for something else. What steps should you take if you're in a colorless, gray rut? Take breaks from good things. Remove yourself from that environment or situation for a certain amount of time. Then come back. You'll be better able to notice things that are great. People who go on business trips, for example, often find that when they come back, they suddenly appreciate their comfortable home, their loved ones, the view from their window. You can also take this break in your mind. Close your eyes and imagine not having your house, not having your family, not having your job. Try to imagine it with vividness and detail. When you open your eyes again, there's some dishabituation, this feeling of gratefulness. Don't overlook variety. It causes you to be in a state of learning. This could be something big, like moving to a different place or taking a new job. But it could also be smaller things, like taking on a new skill. Learning is one thing that really induces the most joy in people. The changes you're talking about here are experiential. You can't buy your way out of a rut, right? If you buy a new car, an outfit, phone, or whatever, you tend to habituate quite fast. When it comes to experiences like a concert, a lecture, or a night out, if the experience was good, you tend to retrieve it in your mind every so often. And it still has quite a high amount of joy associated with it. That's one of the reasons why a lot of findings show that experiences give you more joy than material things. Aside from sparking joy in your life again, are there any other benefits of dishabituation? One study has shown that people move from one country to another for a short duration. They're better at problem solving. It could be because everything is new. The language, the way things look, the people, everything. Their brain is on in a different mode. A mode of taking in information and thinking about things differently, so they become better at problem solving. Another interesting study has shown that if you change your environment in a very simple way, like getting out of your office to work in the kitchen or a coffee shop or go for a walk, you become more creative. Now, the creativity boost that you get from simply changing your environment lasts for only about 6 minutes. However, those 6 minutes could be quite important. That could be a big eureka moment. So it's definitely something that I recommend doing any workday. Don't just sit in the same place. Try to change your environment somewhat. Are some groups of people more susceptible to habituation than others? One thing that we think may matter is age. There is a well-known U-shape of happiness in life, where happiness is relatively high in teenagers and kids. Then it goes down, 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 and reaches rock bottom on average in your midlife. Then it starts going up again. So why do we have this low point in midlife? One of the reasons is that we have a lot of sameness. Midlife is a time where most of us have been in the same situation for a long time. Perhaps staying in the same place, in the same job, with the same partner for a long time. These things can be good. But if you stay in that position for a long time and you're not progressing upwards, people usually tend to feel a bit down. Because what people like to do is see themselves progressing. A viral 9-month world cruise saw plenty of drama, but not the kind you'd expect. When Royal Caribbean's Ultimate World Cruise sailed out of Miami and into social media virality in December, it promised an unforgettable 9 months. For passengers, a once-in-a-lifetime journey to all 7 continents. And for viewers, a 360-degree stream of onboard drama, as told from the perspective of a rotating cast of characters, since people could join at any point for one or more segments of the trip. Many of the roughly 650 full-timers on board started posting videos on TikTok and Instagram, filming their routines at sea and explorations on shore, and a handful of existing content creators firmly rooted on land from New York to California studied and synthesized these videos to report on the cruise in real time. They recapped the week's events, introducing new characters, chased down rumors using their onboard contacts, and speculated about what kind of spectacles lay ahead. One even made a bingo card, with squares ranging from an early departure to a pirate takeover. The potential for drama was so high, and the content was ubiquitous, that fans began referring to the cruise as a TikTok reality show, even as some worried that online hype would warp or otherwise worsen passengers' real lives. Last week, after 274 nights, more than 60 countries, and millions of social media views, the cruise came to an end. Which means it's finally time to ask, how did it live up to the hype? This absolutely should have been a reality TV show. It would have won so many awards, said Kara Harms, who runs a travel and lifestyle brand and covered the cruise on social media. She created 2 bingo cards, the first of which only took a couple weeks to get a bingo. NPR caught up with several people who were either on board the ship or followed it closely on social media. They all spoke of forming lifelong friendships, marveling at world wonders, either firsthand or vicariously, and genuinely expanding their cultural horizons. They also confirmed that the experience wasn't without drama. I mean, you cannot stick that many people together in a small space and not have there be drama, said passenger and TikToker Jenny Hennicutt. But it wasn't necessarily the kind that people had expected, like romance rumors or interpersonal beefs. The bigger scandals came from much heavier external factors, like politics, war, and literal forces of nature that passengers had to weather during their time together. The ship rerouted a leg of its trip to avoid the ongoing conflict in the Red Sea, got delayed by climate protesters in Amsterdam, and narrowly missed a massive earthquake in Taiwan. Passengers had to be evacuated from Iceland's Blue Lagoon because of volcanic activity, and on board, many followed and increasingly fought over the many twists and turns of fast-approaching U.S. presidential election. I think they definitely shared with the more light, fun things, like running out of wine or the boats flooding with a storm or stuff like that, Harms explained. And then they really launched into the realities of what's happened when you sail around the world for 9 months. You're going to encounter a lot of real things that happen. The real lives behind the TikTok reality show. When NPR first spoke to content creators in January, just weeks into the cruise, the anticipation and some anxiety was apparent. While passengers were excited about embarking on an adventure, some were apprehensive about their overnight internet fame and how it would affect the dynamics on board. Many embraced it, said Honeycutt, who notes that some content creators on board started going viral before they'd even met each other. That buzz brought them together in those early days and set in motion some lasting friendships. With the reality show comparison, we definitely leaned into that online in the beginning, she said. But this wasn't a reality TV show that we had signed up for and signed a contract, right? These were real life. So there was always that you have to be very mindful of others. Videos from the cruise captivated social media for the first several months of the cruise, which creators say is an impressive amount of time for a trend to hold viewers' attention. As an interest in the cruise spread across the social media, two influencers had been watching from the land got sponsorship deals to come on board for brief stints and promised to take their many followers behind the scenes with them. By the time both had come and gone, audience interest began to dip. Harms cut back on her cruise content, but still kept tabs on what was happening on board. By this point, I have spent a lot of time forming these parasocial relationships with all these people on the cruise. But also some actual relationships, like DMing some people on there and forming semi-close friendships, she explains. As time passed and the passengers and creators on land grew closer, the cruise coverage took on less of a gossip rag feel. Multiple people told NPR that once the initial frenzy calmed down, TikTokers realized how the social media speculation could impact passengers' real lives, for better or worse. The handful of land-based content creators ended up working together to decide whether to amplify certain stories or link back to certain videos. You just really want to make sure that people trapped on the boat with a bunch of strangers are having the best time possible. Because at the end of the day, they pay money to be here, and it's an experience and it's a vacation for them, Harms added. Ben Ann Fletcher, a photographer who gained a sizable following covering the cruise from her home in Derryborough, England, as far from an ocean as you can possibly get in the UK, estimates she's made some 300 videos about it this year. Of those videos about people and the so-called drama tended to perform the best. But after hearing from viewers who wanted to follow along with the actual travel, she started making location-focused recaps too. For me, it was never about, I want to continually go viral, Fletcher said. It was more about, well, these people are living their best lives, and for a lot of us who might never have the opportunity to travel like this, it's a way for us to see the world through all these different eyes. And there's only so much drama that can happen in my 9 months, surely. Fletcher got to board the cruise for a day during its sole stop in England in July and met the passengers she spent so many months getting to know virtually. She was shocked by how big the ship felt in real life. The 13-deck Serenade of the Seas is 965 feet long and 106 feet wide, according to Royal Caribbean. I was like, okay, so this ship is actually big enough that you don't like people. You cannot easily see them, she adds. Passengers agreed it was fairly easy to steer clear of more gossip-minded travelers. Several content creators on board said the highlight of the trip was meeting people and making friends. And while social media played a role in that, it ultimately didn't make or break their experience. Take passenger Mike, who had been done some influencing before the cruise and at the beginning of the year spoke of pursuing it as a career afterward. But last week from her hotel room in Miami, she recounted now her TikTok account had been blocked just weeks before the end of the cruise. Someone reported it for selling counterfeit Chanel goods, which she said she was obviously not doing. It was devastating, she said, especially because she lost a lot of videos and memories that she hadn't saved off the app. She doesn't regret all the filming, editing, and posting she did, which she says taught her practical skills. But in hindsight, she wondered if some of that time would have been better spent living in the moment. It just showed me actually how volatile social media is, she said. I really do like doing social media, but I don't know if it always like a thing I would want to do permanently. Now about the drama. The world cruise wasn't an isolated bubble. Some world events hit passengers especially hard. The big one that comes to mind that involved all of us was the big itinerary change and how the ship became a democracy, Honeycutt said. We had to vote on which route we were going to choose when we were unable to sail through the Middle East. The ship was originally supposed to sail through the Suez Canal in May, but the cruise line announced earlier this year that it had to be rerouted due to disruptions in the Red Sea, where Iranian-backed Houthis have been attacking ships since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. Royal Caribbean gave passengers two options: Immersive Africa, a more scenic route that would stop at multiple ports along the continent, or Africa and Greece, which would aim to the ship around Africa and Eastern Europe as quickly as possible, but involved many more days at sea. People were campaigning, people were sharing their opinions, Honeycutt recalled. It was quite dramatic. Some of the people opposed to stopping in Africa made generalizations and arguments that their fellow travelers perceived as racist, like classifying the whole continent as a whole and saying there was nothing to do there. And passengers voted overwhelmingly for the first option, to see more of Africa. But Honeycutt says a fair number of people got off the ship for that portion. Some rejoined in Italy, others did not. When you travel for 9 months, things are going to change, like the state of the world is going to change, Fletcher said. So many people were, let's go with the flow, but others weren't. And I guess, again, that's just representative of real life. Another area of growing tensions was U.S. politics. Fletcher said some people had been wearing MAGA hats and shirts on board all along, but the existing political divide on the ship became more apparent in the spring when former President Trump was convicted on felony charges. Things escalated over the summer after a passenger wore a "Let's Go Brandon" hat. The rhetoric on display made passengers uncomfortable, sparking a conversation about free speech and whether Royal Caribbean should draw a line. Fletcher said a lot of the passengers started responding by wearing shirts and hats in support of Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris. Harris wasn't even in the running when they first got on the ship, a sign of just how much things changed during the journey. A passenger picked up the merch in bulk while on the shore in the final weeks. Luckily, I guess there wasn't that long left on the cruise. Otherwise, perhaps it might have become more of an issue, Fletcher said. More cruise content is coming soon. Once the cruise ended, there was a sense that the floodgates might open, and some newly encumbered passengers might spill the tea about the neighbors that they'd been sitting on for months. Some promised that they would reveal secrets back on land. In recent days, one TikToker teased, posted, and then removed several videos worth of anonymous gossip. The people NPR spoke with said they didn't think there was much tea worth spilling. For the most part, they said people aren't trying to burn bridges, but maintain the relationships they formed on the cruise. I would go as far as saying I met some of my best friends in my life on this cruise. She is from South Africa and now offers to crash with people scattered across the U.S. Honeycutt and her husband plan to stop at new friends' homes during the road trip from Florida to Vegas. Fletcher plans to watch the upcoming live stream wedding of the daughter of a cruise couple she became close to from afar. And then there's the reunion cruise. In an on-board announcement just days before the cruise ended, Royal Caribbean International President, CEO Michael Bailey revealed there will be a 7-day reunion cruise in Alaska, which the World Cruise did not visit, in September 2025. It's a little bit of a two-part of the ultimate world cruise, because we know circumstances were the way they were, he said, adding it to be on the same exact ship. Honeycutt says they and most of the people they know are planning to go. Many bought tickets before they even got off the ship. Fletcher, who says she never dreamed she wanted to go on a cruise before covering this one, may try to make it. Otherwise, she says she'll definitely be cruising virtually. The crazy and exciting thing is that anyone can book that cruise. It's not just for world cruisers, Honeycutt said, so I believe they will have followers that can come join us on that cruise. People are just so excited and engaged with this experience. Another reason to look forward to the reunion, that's where Royal Caribbean plans to announce the details of their next Ultimate World Cruise. Bailey said passengers on the reunion cruise will get first dibs on rooms. What does that mean for the so-called social media reality show? Honeycutt says she still has cruise content to post, like recaps of her favorite places and vlogs from days when she was too busy to edit. Fletcher is already turning her attention to another developing cruise drama. A ship scheduled for a 3-year world cruise has been stuck at its home base in Belfast since May. But Harms is skeptical any future world cruise coverage will reach the same viral heights as the original. I think what happened was really special and unique and unprecedented in the way that we create content online. And honestly, I don't think it can be replicated again, she said. Who knows? But I think that sometimes it's nice to just have a special moment and then button that up and move on.